Hey, my Emo brothers, back again. Edward always pulls me off into this Bernard Riley show. So I peeked my head in and they were talking about Brittany Cooper and how she was saying that the black manosphere radicalizes black men, all that kind of stuff. They got on the discussion of black love and then they got on the discussion of black patriarchy. And in this space, black patriarchy comes up a lot. And as one brother was saying that, because I disagree with it, I said there's never been a black patriarchy. And I was saying there's never going to be a black patriarchy. And the brother said there is no such thing as never, right? So he doesn't believe in never. And I'm thinking that we're trying to push a black patriarchy when the country is going the opposite direction. And believing that by some shape, form, or fashion, that by your masculinity or your alphaness, you're going to impose a black patriarchal structure onto the black community when there never has been. And there is not a vote for it, and the broader society is not for it, and your women aren't for it. So how are you going to do this again? You think you're going to work hard enough and buy your way into a black patriarchy? If the white folks can't get their women to submit to a white patriarchy? So I'm confused. And the biggest thing that baffles me is, what is a black patriarchy? Nobody's ever really defined it. Even though Sergeant Willie Pete goes off about black patriarchy, black patriarchy, black patriarchy, right? Nobody's ever defined a black patriarchy. The closest thing that I've seen I think what they mean is that where black men are the head of the household and the woman stays at home and takes care of the kids and that kind of stuff. Is that what they mean by black patriarchy? Because if that's the case, black women were always part of the labor force and they were never stay-at-home type. And even by definition, by white folks, that was never the case. So I'm baffled about this thing we call black patriarchy, especially in an egalitarian society. Because by definition, a white patriarchal structure, a traditional patriarchal structure, is men having ownership and control of his household. That means his wife, if she's there, his children belong to him. All the assets of the household and money and whatever go to him. He manages all that, he controls all that, and she does what he says. And she gets protection, provision, and all this hard work and labor that goes along with it, right? That was the bargain. Just did this on Controversial Counsel, and women actually went ape shit. The Tender Years Doctrine, especially in England, started to erode the white patriarchy, something the black folks never had, Negro never had. And in 1890, the first 10 Years Doctrine was the woman was actually in control of the child or had receivership of the child until the child got to be 7. That's where the 7 years old comes in, right? And at 16, you're an adult. In 1996, the United States completed that cycle and gave ownership or control of the child to the age of 16 to the woman, thereby really rending away what we think of as traditional patriarchy, right? Now, since then, we have what we call a modified quasi-patriarchy until the 1960s. When women got the right to vote, they got the right to work, they got the right to earn money. And, so in the 1960s, you pretty much did away with what we thought of the patriarchy. You had the dawning of an egalitarian society. 1972 with Title IX completely blew all that away. And men have been working at a deficit ever since. She could walk away with the kids. She could have the kid out of wedlock. In other words, she could do whatever the fuck she wanted to do and stick you with the bill. That doesn't sound like a patriarchy to me. That doesn't even sound like a fair bargain to men. What it sounds like is an oppressive matriarchy. But that's just me. But what I'm saying here, and this is what I want, because I don't want to make this too long, the brothers out there that believe in a black patriarchy, and believe that one can exist, or believe that we had one, or whatever it is that a black patriarchy is, what I need is the definition. And I don't want this how I feel, or I'm earning more money and she stays at home. I want a structure, because the old patriarchy, traditional patriarchy, even today, you go to Greece, you go to China, you go to South Korea, you even go to Japan. The children belong to the father. Single mothers then they're bastards, right? They're illegitimate, and so the father has no rights or ownership to it because he never married, and she never entered into a contract. So he doesn't owe her provision, a child support, nothing like that, or at the best bare minimum. And he doesn't get control of the child because the child doesn't belong to him. United States, that doesn't work. Really, the last vestige of what we think of as a patriarchy basically ended when women that had babies out of wedlock and didn't have a husband could get welfare and child support. They did away with illegitimate because you didn't have to have a marriage contract for the father to have patriarchal responsibilities to that child. So what we think of as a patriarchy is, like Dr. Phil Valentine said, is a perverse matriarchy. And for black folks who never had a patriarchy to begin with, that existed in a matriarchy, and now we're talking about black patriarchy, and people talk about patriarchy from as individuals. Now explain to me how you can do that. You have an agreement with the woman. How do you do that? Even the Nation of Islam that claims to be a patriarchy, right? And we had that discussion on Dennis Sperling's show, because the NOI said that was the example of a black patriarchy, right? And I agree with him that the Nation of Islam, or Islam, gives men more goodies, they're more advantages, they're more helpful, the women get in line more, but at the end of the day, it's still a gunocracy, right? Because I asked him, in traditional Islam, he straight up, and he knew where I was going to. I said, in traditional Islam, who do the children belong to? He said, the man. In the West, Nation of Islam, who do the children belong to? He said, the women. It's no different than the gynocracy, right? And I've heard many, many examples of a woman going from man to man to man, having kids by all of them, and carrying her children right along with them. So even at that, a pseudo-patriarchal structure like the Nation of Islam is not really a patriarchy. Not a traditional patriarchy like their Islamic brothers. And trust and believe in Islam, any Islamic state outside the United States, them kids belong to that father. They don't belong to you. They belong to that father. United States, guess what? 10 years doctrine. Those kids belong to the mother. That should tell you something. Anyhow, with that, I'm going to jump off here. I just ask that question and see what the responses are. And please, man, don't give me this feeling stuff, man, because I don't want to hear that. Define it. Tell me what it is. Tell me the structure. And please make a good case for it, man. Because you know what? I don't want to hear that what I feel and women should bow down. I want to hear all that, man. Patriarchal is a traditional, organizing, cultural structure. Defined. It's clearly defined. Going all the way back to Greece and Rome. It's clearly defined. If you have an idea about a black patriarchal structure, shoot it to me. I probably would disagree with it, but at least I want to hear where you're coming from. But with that, I'm going to jump off here. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.